Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of FitRx. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Dennis, as always. Going to talk to a gentleman today by the name of Steve McKinney, and he is kind of a fitness enthusiast and always enjoy just talking to like-minded people. He has been in kind of the fitness world for a long time. I'll let him explain his story a little bit, but he has a website, Fitness and More. He works with people, helps train people. As we've been talking before the recording, he does jujitsu, which I've kind of toyed with a little bit. You probably heard me talk about that. And he has what's referred to as the 3W approach to fitness, which I'm sure we'll get into, and just a lot of experience in the fitness world and training people. So excited to just kind of pick his brain. And then on top of all that, he's a pastor, which is really cool. And so, um, anyways, Steve, welcome to the show.
Dr. Greg, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I am honored to be here, actually. So
Yeah.
I'm
Well, thank you.
glad to talk to you. Glad to talk to you today.
Yes, sir. Well, I guess tell us, if you will, first, just a little bit about yourself and how you got here. What got you interested in fitness and kind of what you're doing today, and just a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Um, it actually goes back a long time. I remember when I was a kid, my grandfather, and I always was intrigued with, big muscle guys and weight training and I would watch the Olympics and, watching these guys just hoist heavy weights was just always intriguing to me. And I remember my grandfather took me to a place called Kmart. I don't know if there's any Kmart where you guys are, but he bought me a set of weights. And there were the cement weights, plastic wrapped, and they were called Ultratron. And immediately I just got bit by well, it was the cement bug back then. We call it the iron bug now. But I just got bit by the iron bug. I loved lifting weights. And so I just did that just all through my life and played a lot of sports. And then, I was into gyms. I was a competitive bodybuilder. Um, and then I turned my garage into a gym. And I invited people, just did monthly memberships. And I'm in the middle of my residence. I got 50 people coming to my gym, coming and going. My neighbors are complaining, but it was just a blast. But what happened was everyone would ask, and this is it's still very common, but everyone would ask, hey, can you make me up a routine? Can you make me up a diet? And I would just go over those things. And I kind of realized that this one-on-one personal training thing, which wasn't really a thing at the time, was kind of attractive to me. And so I would get muscle and fitness magazines way back when. And in the back of those, they had these ads. And they had an ad for $5 on how to become a personal trainer. So I mailed that a check off to that and got this little book that I just went through and I began to learn things. From there, I what I did was I kept track of everyone's workouts, and I just I looked at what they could and couldn't do, and that's where I came up with my system of fitness from there.
Okay.
So yeah.
Um, and so you still kind of do the same thing now as what you learned then. I mean, and obviously, I'm sure it's evolved some.
It's
You have
evolved.
the
So
Fitness and More website. So tell us a little bit, kind of what you do now.
okay. So back then I was as a bodybuilder, and when I lifted, we lifted heavy weights. But then as I moved forward, there's guys like Mike Mentzer, Dorian Yates, and they did this high intensity approach to training. So I explored that, but I also found where you could use Nautilus principles and things like that applied to weights, and I used those. And that is where that came from. Now, back then, the volume was really high. And I slowly started understanding how little it was that it took to actually stimulate a response for people. And so with my website, it's fitnessandmore.net. What I do with that is it's just a place where I kind of share information and we do online training. I can do training at home. There's a lot of different things we do with that. And that's actually where the book, The Gospel of Fitness, came from. it came from integrating all of these things together. Someone asked, "Hey, how long did it take you to write that book?" And I said, "Well, it took me 34 years because I started my business 34 years ago and I kept track of everything. And then I began to kind of understand how I could train clients. And like I said, what could people do, not just for like a 6 week or an 8 week plan, even though I still use those to get people kick started. But what I was looking at is how can I create longevity for people? What could they do for a lifetime? How can I get what I called weight training back then, the fountain of youth? Now we call it anti-aging longevity, those types of things. How could I get this to people? And that's kind of where, where it all came from and where it is now.
Perfect. What do you think? What's some of the biggest things you've learned? I mean, you're a little bit older than me, but not too much, and we've both been doing, fitness and lifting for a long, long time. I've been doing it for over 30 years, and I've definitely learned some things over the years. Um, what are some things that you've learned that you wish you would have known 30 years ago?
Principle of tension. That's the number one thing I should have learned. And what I mean by that is training muscles and saving joints.
Mm,
That is one of the things that's super important to me now because we have a lot of clients. And like I said, I kept track of what they could do. And early on, it was the double progression principle. You either add reps or you add weight and you kind of get to that maximum thing. And there's a point with lifting weights, I call it the point of diminishing return where it begins to bother your joints rather than it benefits your muscles. It becomes more ego lifting, so to speak. How much weight can you lift? So the evolution for me was keeping the muscle under the load. And that is it's something I still do today, especially as I age. And the movements that we do that I suggest for people are very slow and controlled. I don't do any explosive movements. I train people to muscular failure to where they cannot do in good form another rep. Now
mm,
that and how that looks is kind of different than what most people think about. If you're moving slow, there will be a point in the set where you will not be able to move the weight any further. I instruct my clients to continue to push against that weight, even though it's not moving, just for about 5 to 10 seconds. I have them do a little countdown. I'll count down for them. And so that what is what how I look and now I'll explain further on why that works. So there are with when you look at muscle fiber typing, there are four different muscle fiber types. There's the type, we'll just call them type one, two, three, and four. What we want to get to is type four, okay? And that is actually fast twitch oxidative. And so with that fourth type of muscle, it's a very thick bundle that we want to stimulate, but you can only stimulate that bundle after the other three have been fatigued. Because what your body does, it does orderly recruitment. It only uses the muscle fibers that are needed to apply force to what it's coming against. And so, what I do is I do not unload the muscle, I keep the muscle loaded the whole time. And so, what happens after it, and the magic starts happening right at about 60 to 90 seconds is kind of my window that I'm looking for. And when you get to that fourth muscle fiber type, it takes about 2 to 20 seconds to fatigue that muscle fiber type. Now, here's where it gets good. When you do that, that muscle fiber type, the other three types, they recover relatively quickly. That fourth type, it recovers very slowly. It actually takes anywhere from, and it's going to be based on individual response to exercise, but it takes anywhere from 4 to 10 days to recover. So if you go back into the gym before that muscle recovers, your performance will be hindered because that muscle fiber type that applies the most force is still not recovered. That's why with some clients, I train, and my workouts are very short. They're literally 15 minutes or less at times. And I'm not saying 15 minutes is the only thing, but it's one exercise after the next. elevate heart rate, no rest between sets. I had a client in today. Guy is 66. His name's Ron. And I said, Ron, I'm going to mention you on the show today. He came to me, um, he had a condition that caused his muscle to atrophy. I can't think of what it was, a medical condition. Um, it was he had shingles. That's what it was, and it settled in his shoulder, so he had to have a pulse stimulator and a pain pump for that shoulder because he was
Mm.
always in pain. We started training him over a year ago, and we trained him twice a week. But what we found was he couldn't recover for those 2 days. Now I train him 1 day a week, and his strength has skyrocketed. His shoulder movement, his shoulder pain is totally it's greatly diminished, and he is extremely happy with what's happening with him. And I find as people get older, we have to adjust the workout according to that particular person. Does all
Mm.
that make sense?
Yeah. So just to clarify in my mind of that, kind of time under tension that you're talking about. So let's just use, uh, most people are familiar with the bench press or dumbbell press.
Uh-huh.
And so you're doing that particular exercise. And are you talking about doing a very slow
Correct.
movement, like, like almost a 1 minute rep
No,
or
no,
just,
we're looking at and the time of the rep is going to be dictated by the length of the rep. So if I say, hey, we're going to do this in 20 seconds, well, in a calf raise, the length of the rep is shorter. So you're not going to get a 20-second rep out of that.
okay.
But if so the movement speed is dictated by the individual person, but generally it's a very slow speed movement. And so if I'm looking at a leg press, I did a leg press because I had to shoot a video for a place I'm going to speak at. And the leg press, I did it in 1 minute and 33 seconds. It was 5 reps. And
Okay.
so, but the leg press, the length of the leg press is further.
Hmm.
And so it's longer. So that probably was 20 to 25. I don't know what the math would be on that, but
Okay.
it's a slower rep speed.
So you're just going very slow, controlled movements is
Yes.
is what you're doing.
And here's the other thing. There with weights, the point of diminishing returns, so we don't hurt our joints. What I have learned is a moderately heavy weight
Hmm.
works best. And the reason is there is the mind muscle connection that I
Hmm.
find that's really important. And when I'm training clients, I will always tell them to stay in the moment. Stay in the moment. I have a lady with ADHD, and I was training her this morning, and she is doing a pull down. And she goes, hey, I made a pine. And I said, no, I don't want to hear about your pineapple cake. Stay in the moment. Stay in the moment. So the mind muscle connection really works well because what I'm trying to do, and you will understand this lifting weights over the years, I'm making that weight feel heavier on purpose. And my goal is not the mechanical work per se, how many reps, how many sets, all that stuff. I use the time just to measure. My goal is to deeply stimulate the muscle while saving the joint.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So back to my example of like a dumbbell press. What's going to be like an average rep range? You're going very slow, controlled movements at a moderate weight. So going slow, you're going to burn out quicker than what you would just kind of
Correct.
uh,
And the reason you burn out quicker is because with the faster reps, you're loading and other unloading. So my definition of exercise or a set is keeping it under the load. So
I got
if I'm doing incline dumbbell press, I would say anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds on the way down and 5 to 10 seconds on the way up.
you.
But
Hmm.
I'm not locking out completely at the top of
Gotcha.
the movement. I'm just keeping a little bit of tension there.
Yeah. And then you mentioned you don't have people rest. So are they going from that to a different body part?
Yeah, yes. So
Okay.
here's how my general program is set up. And there are variations to this, and I'll explain that as well. So my general program, I have I don't know if you would know this machine, but it's a Nautilus clamshell ab machine. Have you ever seen one of those? You put your feet under
If I
the
saw it, I
bottom.
might know, but
Yeah, it's a your feet go under the bottom pads and your hands go
Okay.
here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and I always say, hey, let's use the flat back in that so that we engage the abs, we engage the core, and then we start the movement. And then we're doing that movement very slow and controlled. And the details and all of that matter. Like I'll have people make sure the elbows are tight, they're moving slow and controlled in the middle of it, make sure they're continuously breathing so we don't get into Valsalva. So I keep that move. And you'll find that when that happens, people get extra reps. It's really weird, but it does work. So I go abs to pull down, to chest press, to seated row, to overhead press, to curl, to tricep press downs, to leg curl, leg press, leg extension. That's a general program. Now, I vary that. I put it like this. When I get people in the gym, it's like taking a suit that you find on a rack, and then what you do, you have to get that suit tailored. So I
Mm.
give people
Yeah.
the general program, and then I tailor the
Sure.
program to
Yeah.
that individual person. And for example, another thing that I've been experimenting with a lot more just to keep better tension, I've been doing a lot of isometric movements. And so I find that that works very, very well as well. And then I also, in some of the isometric movements, I do what's called a time static contraction. And so let's say, for example, I'm on my desk right now, and and I'll train, when I train online clients, this is what I'll do with them. I have they have to have very little equipment. But let's say that I want to do a tricep movement. If I put um, the sides of my hands into my desk and I slowly begin to push down, trying to flex my arm down,
Mhm.
my tricep begins to engage. And so what I'll use is I'll use an anywhere 10 to 20-second protocol. You go 50% at 10 to 20 seconds. Then you go 75% at 10 to 20 seconds. And then I have them do 30 seconds as hard as they dare. And I say as hard as they dare, not as hard as they can, because when you go as hard as you can, you will begin to what I call brace. And you're using other muscle groups to complete a rep or to stimulate in a way. I want to isolate those muscles in the middle of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And so, this style of training that you're talking about, so you're going one round, do you have them do multiple rounds? It sounds like you're doing kind of
no.
a full body thing. So
Yeah,
just
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 a
one
full
time.
body, just one full
Wow.
body.
Okay.
And going back to getting to that fourth muscle fiber type, that's all you need.
Hmm.
So that's how, and I have, I've trained bodybuilders this way. I train all my jujitsu athletes this way.
Hmm.
Because here's why: a trained muscle is a trained muscle. And that's the way I look at it.
Hmm.
So I have my 89-year-old aunt who will be in Wednesday, and we only do pull downs, chest press, seated row, leg press, and leg extension. That's all she does because that's all she can handle. Her workout is maybe 7 minutes,
Hmm.
but her functional ability is so much better because the goal is to get her stronger.
Yeah.
So that's
Now
how I approach it.
you said, sometimes it takes a long time to recover these muscles. So if they're doing this workout, I mean, are you having them do it, what, twice a week on this
That's
full
it.
body kind of thing?
Generally twice a week is
Twice
where
a
I
week?
use. Yeah.
Okay.
But as clients get older, usually once a week works best. However, some people, they love the mental aspect of what happens in a workout. They just feel good mentally. And so I will let them come in twice a week if they like that. And then I'll change the intensity
Mm.
so that they're not overtraining.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how I
Yeah,
approach
this
that.
is real similar. I interviewed some guys on a podcast. They wrote a book, and you would probably be familiar with it. And I'd have to go back and look at the podcast because I can't remember the name of it. But they had done all this research about kind of the ideal way to work out,
Uh-huh.
and it was very similar to what you're talking about. And it was at that time. I mean, that idea was kind of new to me. And again, I've been in this, kind of doing weightlifting for a long, long time, but it was just a very different kind of idea about they were basically doing they were doing like one rep, very similar to what you're doing, going body to part, but basically doing one rep. But that one rep would be like 90
60.
second rep or
Yep, yep.
something.
Yeah, I've seen those, and you can use those in this type of protocol.
Mhm.
I just don't do my whole system like that. I just
I
kind of
gotcha.
yeah, standardize the system. But yeah, it's this thing I've been doing for a long time, and then I tweak and I still learn how to go about it. How can I make this better? And that's why I'm experimenting with isometrics and more time static contractions, and then I love it.
Yeah, what I like about what you just described, and this really goes along with your kind of whole approach, is that anybody can do it, whether you're 25 years old or you're 89 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, people can still do that. So yeah, that's fantastic. Well, kind of on that note, um, one of the questions that you have on your site is, um, you know, what most people get wrong. What do you think people get wrong in the gym when they go to the gym?
Yeah, one of the big things is in like a lion, out like a lamb. And so I'll give you a couple of thoughts on what people get wrong. So we just had January start. If you the beginning of the year, everybody's going to get a fitness program. And I talked to guys who are like general managers at Gold's Gym, and what they said is they said the first 3 months of the year is when we make all of our money. We
Hmm.
lose money for the rest of the year. But he said we make all of our money in those first 3 months. They sign people up, and then those people don't come back. So they go in like a lion, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this,
Mhm.
and then they go out like a lamb because and that's just not having a proper plan. They're just, I'm just going to go in, I see a bunch of machines, and I'm just going to do this, that, or the other. The second biggest thing is not having a plan. You need to have a plan. You need to be able to measure. Everything should be measurable. If you can measure it, then you can get feedback and then you can change it. And then my third thing on that is goals. You have to have a specific goal. And I think that is vitally important. Maybe it's losing weight, maybe it's gaining weight. For me, I have a grandson. I just had a grandson. I'm gonna train with, I'm gonna wrestle with him when he gets older. I'm gonna do jujitsu with him when he gets older. So those things are important to me. My goal is just to remain as strong as I can for as long as I can.
Yeah.
So that's how I approach it.
And these workouts that you're talking about, you said your was that your grandmother or aunt you said that
My
was
aunt,
doing it for
uh-huh.
your aunt? Okay, for 7 minutes, but it sounds like even for, I mean, that's probably on the short side, but for most people, it doesn't sound like this is going to take very long, correct?
It's so efficient. It is so efficient. And here's the thing also, people gain muscle. I know it sounds crazy. I have bodybuilders who come in and say, well, this will never work for me. It takes me 2 exercises to get them to understand what I'm doing. And by that second exercise, they'll do a set of abs and they'll do a pull down. And they'll look at me with this just really odd look. And it's usually, man, I've never felt anything like that before.
Hmm.
And that is what I kind of, and you know, generally with that type of a client, you have to prove it to them early. But generally, I start slowly with my clients and build up. For example, in the book, I have all the exercises set up. I have a home workout and a gym workout. And what I do is I start people at 3 times per week. The reason I do that is I want them to learn the proper form of the exercise, and then after a few weeks, when they feel good, then they can slowly increase the intensity of the exercise. And then we cut it down to 2 weeks and we add a few more exercises, or 2 days a week, and we add a few more exercises. So there is a learning curve that goes along with this. You learn, you become, I always just tell my clients, you become an expert at stimulating your own muscle. And once you do that, it saves so much time, it saves so much pain for a lot of people with joint injuries and different things like that. And it's very efficient.
Hmm. Interesting. Um, well, talk to us about, so you have a what you refer to as the 3W approach to fitness. I mean, we've talked about the weightlifting. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's, I guess, one of them. But and this is just for fitness longevity. But talk about what that 3W approach is.
So here's what I do. And when I go speak, I always tell people, hold up 3 fingers and makes a W. It's an easy way to remember the system: weight training, walking, and watching your diet. So I tell people to walk for 30 minutes a day. Generally, my advice is to walk after dinner,
Hmm.
within 15 minutes after dinner. It aids in digestion, and especially if they're trying to lose weight, having a calorie deficit obviously is important. That we'll talk about that in diet. Um, Having a deficit is important. But what happens after, if you walk after dinner, there was a study, and I read about this years ago. This guy measured calorie burn, BMR for in for 3 hours after three different protocols. So the first one was walking for 30 minutes. The second one was eating and walking, and the third one was walking and eating. And what he concluded was the eating and walking kicked your BMR up 25 to 30% if you walked right after dinner. And so I tell my clients optimally walk after dinner if you can. And what you'll notice with the walk is when you're walking, you will start to belch. You'll start to, it's just because that walking aids in digestion as well. And so I've that seems to work best, but some people can't do it after dinner. And so what I'd say is just make sure you get your 30-minute walk a day. Then the watching your diet aspect. Um, I was telling you earlier that I had been dealing with something called silent GERD that went undiagnosed for a long period of time. I just had this chronic cough. I'm getting chest X-rays. I'm going to my doctor. They're giving me inhalers, antibiotics, and nothing's working. So I went to an ENT and they described the symptoms. They said, "Oh, you have silent GERD." So I'm like, okay. So I had to go on for the first time in my life on medicine, which just crushed my soul because I just don't want to have to take, something every day.
Hmm.
But it was helpful, but it didn't completely fix the problem. I tried several different diet approaches, one called fast track diet. That seemed to help a little, but I just recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, came across Jonathan Aviv's low acid diet. And that has made a world of difference. And I say that to say this, um, food is medicine.
No doubt.
And
Yep. No
it
doubt.
is, there's no question about it. So when I'm looking at, and like I said, most of my clients who come through the door want to look and feel better. And so generally what I'll do is I'll give them a calorie count because I think that's important. And the reason I think it's important is because most people lie to themselves about how much food they eat. And so if I can track their calories, then what I can do is we can measure and we can adjust. But I also try to tell them to eat real food. That's
Mm.
the most important thing. I'm also a big fan, and I did this for years, of intermittent fasting. I just love intermittent fasting. And so, and I don't do that anymore because I was, hopefully I can get back to it if I can get myself under control. But I'm getting better with this condition that I'm dealing with.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, we preach the same message. I preach it every day, and I'm a physician, but if everybody did all these things, I mean, they wouldn't need me. I would be out of business.
Yep.
But it's funny how it all comes back. My listeners know this because I've been talking about it for years. But it all comes back to the simple things, and that is eat real whole foods,
Yes.
move, exercise, and gosh, if we just did those simple things, just think about. Um, just all of the chronic illnesses that we could prevent.
Yes.
And I hope that actually I have a T-shirt, "Make America Healthy Again," and not to be political in any
I
way.
understand totally.
And
I'm with
it's
you.
and
I'm with
I
you.
tell people it's sad that our health and wellness has come political, become political,
So frustrating. It's
and
so
it shouldn't be.
frustrating.
And I'm not trying to make a political statement, but I am excited that there is at least some awareness being brought to processed foods and different things. And so anyway, yeah, I preach that
No,
all the time.
yeah, I love it. And I love what you're doing too, because I listened to a few of your podcasts and I was taking notes on supplementation and what you're doing with supplementation. I hadn't heard of, there was one that you talked about for uh, spermidine. I
Oh,
haven't heard of that
yeah,
one.
yeah,
So I'm going to research that one. I love that. You have a great show and you have a
yeah.
lot of great content.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Well, appreciate that.
as a side note, have you read Peter Attia's Outlive book?
I have.
Okay,
Yep.
so here's my take on that. I love him. I
Yeah.
think he's fantastic.
Very smart guy. Yeah.
He really is. However, I'm walking and I'm listening to the audiobook. I was walking, we were on
Uh-huh.
vacation and I was outside walking and enjoying the sunshine. And I'm listening to his exercise protocol. He talks about rucking and different
Mm,
things like that. And I'm
mhm,
thinking to myself, oh my gosh, Dr. Peter, you're a chronic overtrainer.
mm.
Your joints will not last. Like this is just my mind. In the
Right, right,
next
right.
chapter, he talked about the surgeries that he had. And
Ah,
a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
that is, and that's why I talk about training muscles and saving joints. And so with rucking, because I just had this question this morning, somebody asked, what do you think of rucking? I said, well, I think it's okay if you're not doing anything else and if you don't overdo it. But with the principle of exercise that I use, which is loading the muscle, rucking loads and unloads. So you have to be really careful on how you go about that. Now, what I did take away, my big takeaway from Dr. Pete was doing something at least once a week, and this is my interpretation or my um, um, the way that I add this to my program. I tell people do exactly what I say, do the weight training and the walking and watch your diet, but challenge yourself maybe once a week. Maybe go out. We have a place called Monk's Mound that has these huge steps. And so my wife and I will go out there and she's just really active and she's one of those people who can just go forever. But we'll go up that, we'll jog up that and come back down. We'll do it 2 or 3 times. It's really, really hard,
Mm,
but it's one of those things that really helps. Now, what I do now is I'll do a really hard jujitsu class on
mm.
Saturday. And I am by far the oldest guy in the gym, but I'll still do my rounds and have fun with it.
Yeah.
So,
I was actually going to ask you about hit training, which is, kind of it sounds like that's
yeah.
what you're kind of
Uh-huh.
referring to. And the reason it sounds like your advice is almost identical to mine and what I've been telling people over the years. Because I study longevity.
Yeah.
I'm certified in age management medicine, which is
I
one
love
of the
it.
ones out there, anti-aging. But so as I've learned over the years, I tell people the ideal kind of exercise because I get asked that a lot. What's the ideal way to exercise? To for longevity.
Uh-huh.
And so I tell them almost exactly what you're saying, although I don't go into detail about how to lift because that's just not what I do. I mean,
Sure.
I'm talking about their nutrition and everything else, but I'll tell them to lift twice a week. So lift something twice a week, move every day. So as you're talking about the walking, and then do some kind of hit training once a week. I mean, so I'm like,
Perfect.
if you'll do those things, in kind of from what I've learned over the years, I mean, that's the formula for longevity as far as from an exercise standpoint. So
It is. And then and like you said, that it challenges you mentally, it challenges you physically to do stuff. And we're saying the same thing. I just put mine in categories, and that's why I use things to try to get people to remember weight
yeah,
training, walking, watch your diet. So
yeah. Well,
those
I
are.
and I lo- I love your approach to weights because it's like I said, everybody can do it.
Oh, I want you to try it sometime. I want you to try it and just
Yeah,
give me
and
feedback on it.
gosh, so many people just um, don't. I think the gym intimidates them because they don't know what to do, and I get that. I've kind of grown up in the gym, and so it's just second nature to me. I mean, I just kind of know you know what exercise works
Of
every
course.
body part, and I've just
Yeah.
been doing it for a long time, and so I don't really have to think about it. But your approach seems like anybody could do it. I mean, they may need a little direction, getting started, and which is what you do. And but yeah, whether you're old, young, whatever. And I'm at the age where I need to start doing more of that because my joints have already started telling on me. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it
yeah.
does it. And at 64, here's what I noticed. I noticed the change starting happening at 40. And
Mm,
I adjusted my workouts at 40. I used to do powerlifting and things like that. My buddies who stayed with that, they all have hip replacements, knee replacements. I do more machine training. The
mm,
reason I use this machines, it's just safer. If you get the proper machines, you can work hard. I don't have to worry about dropping a weight, on myself. So machines are a little bit better, but I still use dumbbells also. But I'm just safe in what I do.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, but at 40s, I started noticing a decline. I could do what I used to do. I couldn't do it as often. 50s, I could not do as um, much as I used to be able to do. And 63 is when I really noticed. that, oh man, we're really noticing this. So now the goal is not to necessarily gain strength, it's just not to lose any more strength.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. If you can maintain, yeah, that's fabulous. Because you have sarcopenia working against you, which is just the loss of muscle as we age. And so I tell people that all the time that yeah, nature is working against you. So you really have to fight against it by eating adequate protein, by exercising, by doing those things. So
And I think that it's important too that we remember that sarcopenia, um, too much aerobic activity could aid in sarcopenia. That's why I kind
mm,
of put a limit. Now, if I have an extremely overweight client and I tell them, if you want to walk twice a day, feel free to do so if that feels good to you. But eventually go down. I put a limit on how much they should do, or at
mm,
least give them a guideline. Now, some people like to walk a little longer. I don't say, hey, this is a law. I'm just giving guidelines in the middle of that.
yeah. On that note, so with your say working out twice a week, okay, and then walking every day, people aren't, I mean, they're getting a little bit of cardiovascular walking, but it's very slow.
Mhm.
Um, do you get asked the question, well, hey, what about cardio? I mean,
Yeah.
where do I throw cardio in there?
So my thing, and I'll tell you, this guy named Dr. Doug McGuffin, he wrote the book Body by Science. And um, what he has claimed is that short workout gives you all the cardio benefits you need. Your heart rate's going to be elevated for that 15 minutes.
Mm,
It's going to be elevated during that time because muscle is the mechanism to move our body. That is more cardio than cardio, in my opinion. For example, I've been doing this for a long period of time. My resting heart rate is ridiculously low. My cardiovascular ability is really good at my age. And so I noticed that people are doing so much better, but I also added that 1 day a week of challenging yourself
mm,
in addition to what we're doing, just to add a little bit of that zone two type of cardio that people might need in the middle of that.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Um, so last question, a little bit of a different question. So you're also a pastor,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And so one of the questions you have on your site is, do you think there's a connection between fitness and faith? And um, that just kind of
Do,
stood out to me as an interesting question. So how do
yeah.
you answer that?
I do. And there's a study done years ago, and this was on churchgoers. And it found that churchgoers have a tendency to live longer than non-churchgoers. And the reason for that, it could be lifestyle, it could be any of those things, but there is this, I just think that we all have something in our heart that we need to connect to. There's a quote. And the quote, I can't remember who it is, but um, what it is it's our heart is restless until it finds rest in you. And so that is kind of my God thing there. I find rest in the Lord in the middle of what I do. And so that faith connection is a very real thing. I think that we're given this gift of a body by a creator, and I think that we have a responsibility to take care of that gift
Hmm,
and to take care of that gift so that we can also help other people in the middle of the gift that we have, help them in whatever way that they need. So as my clients, as my congregation gets older, I just say, listen, you've gained so much wisdom over the years, stick around long enough to share it with this younger generation that's coming up. And so, but for me, I wake up every morning, my Bible's right over there. I read my Bible, I journal. It gives peace to my soul. It's so good for my mental health. So I could go on about that, but that is the connection there is very, very real to me.
hmm. Very nice. All
Yeah.
right. Well, that was all really good stuff.
Thank
So
you. Thank
as
you.
we wrap up, I always ask my guest if they could give us one health tip that would make us healthier today.
You
What would you
betcha.
say to that?
I will say, could I tout my book just for a second though?
Absolutely. Yes, please. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Gospel of Fitness is
Okay.
on Amazon.
Okay.
And when it was released, it went to number one in exercise and fitness for the aging, and it went to number
Nice.
one in quick workout. So I was super excited about that. So yeah, it's out there, and if you look at it, it is a very subtle little T there. I don't know if you can see that,
Yep.
but that is my subversive evangelistic message to people. So
Okay.
here's our big takeaway. Weight training is good for the body. Walking is good for the brain, and watching your diet is good for the biology.
Mm,
All
I
of
like
those
that.
things work together for us to make ourselves better.
Mm, I love that, man. That summarizes everything I preach just about. So I
Love it.
love
Hey,
that.
what a pleasure. Thank you so
Yes.
much. You're a great interviewer, and it was just really fun to do
Oh, that
this.
was fantastic. I appreciate all the information and appreciate everyone listening as always. And
Yes.
we will talk to you next time.
Thanks.